Stacey and her team have, I think, been unbelievably responsive, and so we'll get that out to you just so you understand the facts and why we're fighting so hard on this. On ESEA reauthorization that both of you mentioned, we think we have an extraordinary opportunity to build upon what worked in the previous bill and change what didn't, and to do it in a bipartisan way, and to do it this year. You saw this past week a very encouraging sign with bipartisan leadership of the House committing to work together on this. That sense of bipartisan spirit absolutely exists in the Senate as well, and we're going to work very, very hard on them. Carmel Martin, if you could please stand. Carmel Martin is doing just an unbelievable job of hundreds and hundreds of meetings around the country, locally, nationally, listening to folks about what did work, listening to folks about what didn't work, and trying to come back with something that will take the country to a different level. We've been concerned about those disincentives in the previous law to raising standards, for example. We've been concerned about multiple ways to label schools failures, but very few rewards for success. We've worried about a narrowing of the curriculum, and we think every child should have a well-rounded education. And Carmel continues to work with all of us internally, with many of you, and with teachers, principals, parents, constituency groups, to come up with the best ideas possible. I'll just lay out sort of the framework that we're thinking about, and then I'll stop after this and take any questions you might have. First, building upon the hard work you're doing, we're just committed to this goal of having high standards. That we think having college and career-ready standards for every child in the country would be a huge step in the right direction. Under No Child Left Behind, there were lots of incentives to dumbing down standards, going in the wrong direction. That's not good for children, it's not good for families, it's not good for your state's economy, it's not good for the country's economy. We're convinced we have to educate our way to a better economy. So putting in place incentives to really have college and career-ready standards for every child, we think would be a huge step in the right direction. Secondly, we want to continue to encourage competition, and that can be a little bit controversial. Traditional money, the Title I money, money for special education students will continue to go out on a formulaic basis, but the new money the President has committed to us, we want to put out on a competitive basis, and we want to reward excellence. We think there's so much great work out there in the state level, the district level, the school level. We think we can learn. We think the good ideas are never going to come from us in Washington. They're always going to come from great educators on the local level. And we want to continue to invest behind those places that are challenging the achievement gap, that are challenging the status quo, that are closing the achievement gap and raising the bar for all students. So this idea of rewarding excellence and looking at growth is very important. And third, we want to be much more flexible in our approach. And I think of schools in sort of three broad categories. There's a set of schools in every one of your states that are very, very high performers, that are world-class schools. We want to reward them. We want to learn from them. We want to encourage them. We want to get the bureaucracy out of their way and just let those schools fly. And we don't think enough of that's happened historically. There are other schools in your states that may not be on an absolute basis the highest performers, but where we're seeing unbelievable growth, where year after year the average student is gaining much more than students across your state or across the country. And so while those schools still have to continue to improve, where we're seeing consistent, remarkable growth, again, we want to reward that, we want to encourage it, we want to learn from it, and we want to get out of the way. And so those high flyers, we want to shine a spotlight on. There are a lot of schools in the middle that may not be world-class yet, but are going the right direction, where we want to have maximum flexibility. We don't think we can manage those schools from Washington. We don't think we should manage those schools from Washington. We think, empowering you guys, having good data, holding you accountable, but really watching the progress of those schools and driving change at the local level is the right thing to do. And so we want to continue to provide you flexibility. We want to be tight on the goals, very tight on the high bar, but loose on how you get there. And that's a fundamental change from what NCLB was historically. And then the one counter to that, and again, I've gotten some pushback on that, is I'll go back to the bottom 1% or the bottom 5% of those schools where it's simply not working. I think over the past 5 years, 8 years, we as a country have been far too passive. We've just acted like there's nothing that could happen better for those children. And I just feel a real sense of urgency. When dropout rates are 50, 60, 70%, when students are falling further and further behind, despite our best intentions, I honestly believe that we are perpetuating poverty and we are perpetuating social failure. And we want to stop doing that. The federal government has always had a special interest in children with unique challenges, students with disabilities, homeless children, migrant children. Well, I would say that those children in those bottom-performing schools, bottom 1%, bottom 5%, however you want to define it, we have a special responsibility not to perpetuate the status quo and to do something better. And we're going to challenge you. We're going to put unprecedented resources on the table, but we're going to ask you not just to see those children continue to struggle against insurmountable odds, and we want to partner with you to find ways to be very, very creative to give those students and often those communities who have been underserved, I would argue, in many places for decades, not just for a couple of years. We want to give you the opportunity to fundamentally break through, but really challenge you there not to accept the status quo. So, $3 a schools, high flyers, reward, give them room, give them flexibility. Schools in the middle, hold you accountable for results, but give you the space to figure out how to see those schools improve. And those at the bottom, let's work very, very fast to change outcomes for those children. I'll stop there and take any questions you might have. And I'd like to ask Carmel to come up, and she's the brains of our organization. So the tough questions on ESEA reauthorization, she can help me out on.
Thanks a lot. Governor Bashir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Secretary, thank you for being here with us. Kentucky was an early achiever in education reform. Back in 1990, we passed the Kentucky Education Reform Act that raised the sales tax. We put testing and standards in, and I think in many ways at that time was one of the leaders in the nation in terms of moving to the next level of educational attainment. But I must say that your arrival on the scene, I think, has not only re-energized us, it's re-energized states all around the country in terms of looking at themselves again to see where we go and where are the next levels and how do we get there. I'm proud to say that Kentucky, I think, just became the first state
That's right.
to adopt Common Core standards. And for the very first time, we had a joint meeting of our State Board of Education, which governs K through 12, our Council on Post-Secondary Education, which governs our colleges and universities, and our Educational Standards Board, all in a joint meeting, and they voted to adopt those Common Core standards. And we're very proud of that and are ready to hit the ground running in that regard. I would ask you, as you all look at reauthorizing No Child Left Behind, the experience that we had in Kentucky, quite honestly, when that was passed, was we were already doing more than that law required, but we were not allowed any flexibility. And I think that's a key to any type of approach to this reauthorization. If we're already doing more and better than whatever anybody has ideas to do, then we need to be allowed to do it. We just passed, for instance, in a 5-day period through our legislature, legislation that gives us a lot more tools to address low-performing schools, which is one of the buckets that you just talked about. And I hope and I know from your comments that we are going to hopefully get that flexibility to be able to do more than whatever the minimums may be.
Yeah, no, I appreciate your leadership, and again, to see 48 states working together and see Kentucky being the first state to actually adopt those standards, it's just amazing to see the progress. And again, as you guys know, this used to be the third rail. A couple of years ago, you couldn't talk about college-ready, career-ready standards, and now you have 48 governors, 48 state school chiefs working together. The heads of both unions are on board. The business community has been crying out for this for a long time. National nonprofits, Gates, Achieve, College Board are all pushing very hard in this direction. So it's an idea whose time has come. On flexibility, I just think it's so hugely important. I don't think we can micromanage 100,000 schools in Washington. I think we should get out of that business. And again, we want to reward excellence. We want to see schools in the middle improve, and we want to be very tough and forthright on those ones at the bottom. But the best, I'm repeating myself, but those best ideas are always going to be at the local level. And so we want to empower you. We want to hold you accountable. And that idea of flexibility is one that we just heard around the country. No one is scared of accountability. People want to step up. They felt hamstrung. They felt tied down.
Right.
And we want to free you. The other thing is, as we get into the conversation, the one thing I'd really challenge you to help me think about is we want to reward high-performing schools. We want to reward high-performing districts. And we want to reward high-performing states that are, again, raising the bar for all children and closing the achievement gap. And I want you to really challenge us to think about what are those set of incentives that would make you guys kill yourselves to get to that next level. What are those things that we can put on the table beyond just the flexibility, that will have folks, working, long hours and weekends to give children a real chance. And so the more you can push us to think about what that bucket of incentives are at the state level, at the district level, that would be very helpful as we continue to think this through.